Hey everybody, WVGunsNGoats here with a short video about the GForce Arms Blade 8 PCC right here. Now, if you have one of these or a Blade 6, this video will probably be of interest to you. I'm going to show you what kind of small modification I made to this gun to improve the feel of the charging handle, because when I first got it, it felt like it took a ton of force to operate this charging handle, more so than any other PCC that I've handled. And I've asked people with these Blade 8s and with the Blade 6s, is your charging handle fairly stiff? And a lot of them agreed with me. So I decided to dive into the gun and see what I could do to make it feel better when charging it. And I think I figured it out. Now, unfortunately, due to a certain video hosting platform's rules, I cannot show you myself making these modifications, but I can give you enough information. I know y'all out there watching are smart enough to figure it out. But before we do, how about you go ahead and headbutt that subscribe button to join the herd here at WV Guns and Goats. So when I took the gun apart, I started looking at this right here, which is the recoil spring and guide rod assembly. Now look how smoothly that spring moves on there. That wasn't always the case, because there was a ton of lathe marks running the entire length of this guide rod here. So what I did was I took this guide rod and I chucked it up in my mill. If you have a drill press, you can do this. If you have a hand drill, well, you can kind of do the same thing here. And I turned the mill on, so this was spinning, and I just took various sandpaper and worked them up and down the guide rod there. And I could watch those machine marks disappearing and smoothing out. I started at 180 grit and worked my way up to 2000 grit. If you wanted to spend a bunch of time on it, you could probably make this a mirror finish on here. I reassembled the gun and it felt better, but it still felt like it had a hitch when you got back to about here and went to pull it the rest of the way so you could lock the charging handle up into this slot and HK slap it. It felt like there was a hitch and it required even more force. And what I found out there was, after looking at this guide rod again, now where this transitions from large to small is what we want to address here. They had left a 90-degree shoulder the entire way around this large section right here. And when that went into the bolt here, well, it would catch on that shoulder. So while I had this in the mill, I took a file, and with this spinning, I just touched that metal file and held it on the corner here. The idea was just to break that 90-degree angle right there to give it a little bit of a bezel. And I went at it again with the sandpaper afterwards to finish polishing it up and remove any of the marks that the file may have made while we were giving that a little bit of a bevel. And putting it back together after that, it was noticeably improved over what it felt out of the box. So I started to look at it and see what else I could do, and I figured out the bolt right here. So this is where the guide rod passes through the bolt. It comes from the backside, not like this. And this hole right here actually goes back to about here. So there's a good bit of bearing surface. We have about a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch of hole diameter. That's this size, and then it gets larger at the rear here. So what I did was I polished that as well. I made myself a tool right here that I could put in a hand drill, and I just cut a slot in the end of a dowel rod so that we could put some sandpaper in the dowel rod and then wrap it around the dowel rod like so and fit it into the hole right there. Now you have to play around with the length of the sandpaper so that it's not too loose, but it's not too thick that it doesn't go into the bolt there. And I would spin this in a drill, which would rotate the sandpaper inside the hole there. And I worked my way up through the high grit, up through that 2000 grit. And now the hole in the bolt is very, very smooth. And this gun feels a whole lot better than it did when I first got it out of the box. So if you have a Blade 8 or a Blade 6 PCC and you have some hand tools or some power tools like a mill or a drill press, you can easily do these modifications yourself and really improve the feel of this gun. So everybody, I hope that helps you out. This has been another WV Guns and Goats video. And as always, remember, if you're not out there having fun shooting, well, what are you doing?